Welcome to North of the Broad. I'm your host, Karen Wyman, coming to you from Higher Ground in Buford. We have a great show lined up for you this afternoon, so stay tuned for more North of the Broad. Welcome to North of the Broad. I'm your host, Karen Wyman, coming to you from Higher Ground in Buford. I'm joined this afternoon by Jonathan Council from the Holy Trinity Classical Christian School. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Nice having you here this afternoon.
It's good to be here.
I hear you're new to Buford.
We are. We came in August, my wife and I, and our 5-month-old daughter, Claire Lane.
So welcome to Buford.
Thank you very much.
So you guys have a lot going on at Holy Trinity. We know we've watched the school grow over the last several years, and obviously lots going on with upperclassmen as you move now to the 10th grade, correct? Mm-hmm. So tell us about the U.S. Constitution Project and what's going on with all of the 10th graders this year.
Well, the 10th graders this year get the opportunity of doing an integrated humanities course, which means they're taking their composition, their literature, and their history together under one instructor, which happens to be me in this case.
Sounds pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. So I get them 3 times a day. We get to focus more on their writing and on their comprehension and reading. And so one of the assignments that I like to do is the Constitution, where they write out a portion of the Constitution so that the class as a whole creates, or recreates rather, the U.S. Constitution as a whole. So Reverend Lawrence donated some pens, fountain pens to each student. He's a fountain pen advocate and just loves those things. And we even used some pretty cool ink that he provided, and we wrote out the entire Constitution.
Already?
Yes, it's
already
finished. Yeah.
And you have about 19 or 20 10th graders,
Mm-hmm.
is that what I understand? So, you know, what were some of your students' favorite aspects of this project?
Well, I brought in candles. Students love an open flame, so that was
and so did teachers and administrators.
That's right. I had to pass that pretty quick. You know. So they loved. I played an old record of that Time put out a long time ago on various Revolutionary War tunes and hymns and primary source readings, and then they just kind of wrote them out. That was all we did for several class periods. So I think that was their favorite part, was the fountain pens, the original ink, the parchment, and the kind of ambiance.
The candlelit,
yeah,
and it really would draw you back to, like, if you were writing these documents during that time, what tools you would have and not have.
That's right, that's right.
In order to get this project completed. I'm sure it brought some level of awareness about the amount of time, sort of technique that it would take to create a document of such, doing it with your own pen and ink. Mm-hmm.
It did. I think one part of what's fun about being at this school is the school is really interested in helping the kids to encounter the past, to encounter some of these great works and great minds, and I can think of no better way than copying out the works of great men and women.
Right. So obviously, this school brought you here to Buford, you and your family. What do you enjoy most about teaching right now at Holy Trinity?
Well, I've watched Holy Trinity for several years. I know Chad, the Reverend Lawrence, from a couple of conferences ago, and the school is part of a very fast-growing, probably the fastest-growing movement in the United States right now. And this school is special. There's a kind of gravity to this school that I love. Reverend Lawrence commands absolute respect from the students, and yet the students are just in love with learning. And that's a fun...
Yeah, it's a great place to be.
You can have sometimes either or, but it's nice to have both.
Right, the confluence of both of those things, you know, to come together. So briefly, you know, for people who are out there who are watching this segment and may not be familiar with Holy Trinity and are not sure of what a classical education means, could you just define some of those characteristics for our viewers?
Sure. Classical education is a very inclusive, it is the fastest growing movement in America. It means a variety of things to different people, but I think I could summarize by saying there are 4 basic elements that you'd find in common. The first is a high view of man, from the Jews to the Greeks. We believe that there's a divine spark in man, so it holds that up as an important aspect, and therefore virtue or good practices are important, good citizenship. Second, we're interested in something that we call looking for the logos, we call it. It's this logocentric view. So first is a high view of man. The second is what we call logocentrism, which means that the world is knowable and that it's a unified thing. We're looking for those kind of unified principles of knowing. So instead of focusing on disparate facts, let's say, we're going to focus on the skills, kind of like the scientific method, by which everything else is known, in other words. We believe also there's appropriate pedagogy, which means we believe that if you have a high view of man and you believe the world is knowable, that would change the way you teach in the classroom. So we focus more on the how of learning rather than, although content is super important.
Yeah. We got to get it delivered some way.
But we find that the skills of learning, the arts of learning, are something that's lacking that we need to kind of help.
Obviously, developing those skill sets at an early age allows people, to grow and carry those with them and hopefully become stewards in our community.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, our time has run out here, but I certainly would love to have you come back and be a guest in the spring. We can learn more about what you guys are doing with the 10th graders and maybe some of the other levels at Holy Trinity. But thank you so much for coming to Buford and working at Holy Trinity, and I'm sure you have a fabulous year.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back with our next guest on North of the Broad.